Hello everybody, this is TB again, talking about the self-reliance in buying a place where you got your own power sources and everything like that. You don't do that overnight if you don't have the money. What you have to do, I'm trying to get this camera where y'all can see me. Just kind of well, let me see if it's kind of dark in here, but anyway. Talking about buying property, you might want to think about buying in areas where you get homestead exemption. There's a few states that I know of that has homestead exemption. One of them is Oklahoma, and I'm not sure which other states have homestead exemption, but there's a few that do. Oklahoma does. I know it does definitely. But you might want to look into that situation, and in case you don't want to pay a whole lot of taxes like me here on this 2 lots, I pay $5 or 10, something like that a year for my taxes on this property now, because I go and I file for double identity homestead exemption. But you get homestead exemption anyway in Oklahoma, which my taxes would be around $100 if I didn't file the double identity. The double homestead exemption, basically, what it requires you to be low income enough to get it, and retired or disabled or over 65, or a veteran. Okay, now you can check into that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on the veteran too. Anyone that's a veteran gets this double homestead exemption in Oklahoma. Now, Missouri doesn't have homestead exemption. I don't know about Arkansas. I think Ohio might have. I'm not sure. Some of them do. Some states do. Some states don't. But most of them don't. I believe there's just very few that do, to my knowledge. At least, I don't know everything about the other states. But Oklahoma, you can get homestead exemption. That's a good thing if you just have one home. Now, if you own more than one place and they're not all joined to the same deed and document, you could have a whole ranch, a whole section, 460 acres, and it could be one homestead. That don't matter as long as the land's all under one title, one deed, one title. You can do that. But now if you have 2 different deeds and 2 different properties, they count that against you, and you can only have one homestead per state. Now that's not to say that you can't buy property over in some other state and that has homestead exemption. I'm not sure which states do. I can't remember which ones do and don't. But I think there's another one or 2 that does. But you could buy property in another state, and you would get homestead exemption in certain states. Now then too, you want to check and see what your resources are when you're buying property. You're probably not going to get too much resource if you're just buying an acre to 5 acre place, or a lot to 5 acres, we'll say. The place might have a lot of woods on it, undeveloped, if you're buying way out, and it may have plenty of woods. What you want to look for is birch pine. Birch pine, very good for starting fire. Persimmon thickets, very good for finding game. Possums, coons, and all that likes to hang out in there. Deer, they munch on that good. I've killed more deer and smallpox out of persimmon thickets. Okay, that doesn't matter. That's survival I'm talking about there. But you might want to look at where you're buying. Look at it. Make sure you're not in a flood area where water's going to run over your house where you'd be living at. And if you're down in the bottoms, you want to be sure that you have a good dry spot anyway, high enough up that you ain't flooded out. That's what I'm saying here. If you're buying the bottomlands. Now, mountain territory, you got your spotted ticks to look at. They're worse than snake bite, in my opinion. I've been bit by ticks so many times, and yeah, I got the Lyme disease once, but I haven't been bothered with it too much anymore, other than if I get a fever, I get it bad, But to make a long story short, when you're looking for land, be sure it's something that you can use. If you're going to plan on growing crops, then you may want a bottom piece of land, something like that to look for. if you're going to pay, if you're going to go out and buy you an acre of land or so. But my suggestion is, if you don't want debt over you, buy your land first, even if there's no house on it. Take you a camper trailer out there, whatever, and live in it while you build you a house. You can always build you a structure of some kind. I've lived in wickiups. Do you know what a wickiup is? It's just a stack of brush to keep you dry, up like a teepee kind of, but it's just rigged up and kept rounding and it's all weaved together in the middle, tied in 2 or 3 places. And if you're lucky, you might have a trash bag at the top. But it keeps you dry when you're camped out and you don't have a tent. I didn't have a tent, didn't have the money for a tent. And I've lived in them. I've lived in old cellars when I was a boy, trapped on creeks and caught my game and sold hides and ate the meat from the game that I got. We wasted nothing. We used every part of it, either in the meat, the hide, bones we used for different things, needles and different things, scraping tools for scraping hides, different things. Turkey bones, I used them for turkey calls. You can drill you a hole through the turkey bone. I ain't going to get into all the details, things that I know how to do. But talking about land, you want to look at where you want to be. And if you and your mate would be happy there too. If you're not happy living way out, then I suggest you pay a little more money for a lot in town, or suburban, or somewhere where you'd rather be. And if you got to be near, your works and stuff. Now I'm retired, so it wouldn't matter to me if I lived plumb out in the North 40 or wherever, as long as I got a good shelter, dry, warm shelter over my head, and plenty of food, and plenty of wood resource where I can heat my house. I'm a happy camper. Now in the summer, if it's hot, you know what I'm going to do. If I ain't got no money or no way to run air conditioning, I'm headed for a swimming hole. I'm going down there in the heat of the day and take me a nice swim. I'm not going to sit there and burn up all day when I got common sense to go get wet and stay in the shade till the hot day's over. 'Cause I ain't got nowhere to be late to nohow, no work to do except what I want to do. When you're disabled, you don't have much to do anyway. You can go fishing, sit in the shade, but it costs money to get there when you live in town. You have to drive. Well, I have to drive 9 miles one way to find a fishing hole. Sometimes. Well, not exactly. I could go down here on the old Poto Lake, but not a lot's caught out there, except in the spring. There's a little bit of crappie in there, but not a whole lot. It's just not a very good place to fish. But now down on the river, I've caught a lot of catfish out there. Now I'm a catfish man. I like catfishing, night fishing like that. When we catch them catfish off the bridge and stuff, fishing straight down off an old bridge. Take you a little wine out there and drink you a little wine and have a good old time. Play you a little music, and just have a good old time. But anyway, that's me. That's what I likes to do at night. And I used to use lights. Fish were curious. They'll come to a light, and you can have your hooks and your bait right there, and they down on that water, just about a foot off the water, lower your lights down there, and those catfish will come up there, and when they hit it, you don't have to have lights necessary. Crappie will bite at night that way with lights too, and bass. But I use a bell right on the end of my fishing rod, so when it hits, I know I got me a fish or not, unless the wind's blowing bad. Sometimes you can't tell for sure. But it's a way to catch fish. But anyway, when you're looking at resources, make sure you have plenty of good water on your place if you can, if it's possible, when buying a place, because you're not going to get a whole lot really for $400 or $500. You may have to wish you out a well, or witch it out, they used to say. What it is, you just cut you a peach tree limb or copper. Any fruit tree limb would work, but peach tree's the best, in my opinion. You cut it to a point out of a Y, in a Y, and you hold it straight out in front of you, and you walk till that pointer goes straight down. And it will when you come over water. But be sure there ain't water lines and sewer lines when wishing this well, or gas lines, because anywhere water is down there, that thing's going to point to. Now that don't mean you're going to get good water just because there's water there.